Welcome to If It Doesn't Feed You, Don't Water It, a wellness podcast for women of color. My name is Nyamka Robert-Smith. I am many things, but today I am your podcast host. In this episode, we are discussing PCOS, also known as Polycystic Ovary Syndrome. We'll be discussing my personal experience with PCOS, my symptoms, my journey to get diagnosed, how I'm treating it, as well as what I've learned about PCOS along the way. And hopefully at the end, you will take away from it signs to know if you should be concerned if you have PCOS and ways to manage your PCOS if you are struggling as well. PCOS, also known as Polycystic Ovary Syndrome, doesn't necessarily mean that you have cysts on your ovaries, even though that's the name of it. I didn't name it. I don't know why it's like that. But PCOS has a handful of symptoms, and I believe you need to have like 3 out of 4 or 3 out of 5 of like the main symptoms in order to be diagnosed with PCOS. Those symptoms are irregular periods, weight gain, which is linked to insulin resistance, abnormal body hair or hair thinning. So hair thinning on the top of your head, but abnormal body hair, meaning maybe hair between your chest, hair on your upper lip, your chin, just increased hair growth in areas that women typically don't grow hair or a lot of hair. And the last symptom or like criteria for diagnosing PCOS is having multiple follicles in your ovaries. From what I understand, your follicles are like the little holes where your eggs are formed within your ovaries, and people with PCOS have a lot. I believe like an average number is like 15, and when I went in for PCOS to get checked out, I had like 30 or 35 or something like that. And the issue or struggle with that is that as the amount of eggs that you have increases, the quality of those eggs decrease. So that correlates to the reason of PCOS being, I believe, the number one cause of infertility in women. My story with PCOS begins from, I don't know, I guess when I hit puberty, right? I had always had irregular periods. My periods were always very weird. I would have them for like 2 weeks at once, and then I would not have it at all for another 3 months. So I'd probably get my period like 4 times a year, but it didn't bother me because I hate having my period. So I never really addressed it. I didn't do really anything about it. And I always kind of just thought or assumed that it was that way because I was a runner and I ran track. I had very little body fat. I was very thin. I was running miles and miles every day. And it was normal amongst all of the women I know who ran track to have delayed periods. A friend of mine, she didn't even get her period till she was like 16. For all of us to have just like weird hormonal things going on. At the time, I guess it should have been a red flag. Like in hindsight, it sounds like a red flag, but it was just normal for all of us. So I didn't think to address it. And I also didn't want my period more regularly. So like I was trying to avoid that. Months before I turned 30, I figured I might as well go get like a fertility test. My mom didn't have me until she was 30. So in my head, I was never even going to consider children until I was 30. I gave myself a very long buffer because I knew that I didn't want kids young. So I wasn't going to stress it, and I wasn't really going to think about it until I turned 30. So to do my fertility test, I went to this place called Kindbody in Los Angeles, and they're more of like a holistic wellness, very like thought out kind of OBGYN or fertility clinic for women. And I went there and they diagnosed me with PCOS. Actually, they diagnosed me with lean PCOS because she was saying that I wasn't overweight, even though I had in the last year prior to that gained more weight than I was usually comfortable with in my adult life. I had gone gone about my whole life being about the same weight, anywhere between 110, 115. But in that last year, I had gained 10 pounds, which doesn't sound alarming, but for me and my body that had always been very thin, you could notice it on me. And also, I'm very short. So any little bit of changes like that, I'm always like, what's going on? It didn't feel normal to me. But also that wasn't the reason for me to go in to get checked for PCOS. It was just something that had been bothering me. It was also during the pandemic. And of course, all of our life habits changed during that time. I was less active, drinking more, eating more, baking. So of course, a lot of people gained weight during the pandemic. It wasn't a big deal. So I get diagnosed with PCOS. It's 2020. I turn 30, blah, 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 blah. I've gained a little weight. I feel chunky. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to start working out. I start working out with my friend's trainer. I start at going in maybe like once or twice a week, right? And I'm going for once or twice a week for about, let's say, 5 months. And then I start going 3 times a week, let's say, for another 3 months. Then I start going every day I went to the gym every single day, working out with this trainer for, I don't know, maybe another 4 or 5 months. My weight did not change at all. And in my head, and I'm like, maybe it's just body composition. Maybe I'm gaining more muscle, even though I'm not losing fat like I want to be. But in the back of my head, like, something isn't right. And my periods are also outrageously abnormal. I am bleeding so much, like bleeding through everything. Super, super extra, extra plus. Like, I can't even go anywhere because I have to have access to a bathroom within an hour and a half. It really started to like cripple my life. I was bleeding out like at that frequency or at that volume for like a month at a time. I think the longest stretch of time that I was bleeding was like, I want to say like 5 weeks. And part of me had gotten used to it, and I think this is like a fault of mine from either my track days or just having like very strict parents growing up. I just pushed through it. I just kept working through it. I was bleeding literally through everything. I felt very like weak and tired, but I still wasn't really doing it. I'm like, I know I had to go to the doctor about this, but like, I'm like, what are they going to do? I know I have PCOS. This is just, what it is. But it got to a point where I just could not handle it anymore. And I went to Dr. Thais Aliabadi, who she is a world-renowned gynecologist here in Los Angeles. Now, Dr. Aliabadi is a world-renowned gynecologist, like a celebrity doctor. But I knew that she could help me. She is like prominent on social media and really talks about this a lot. I actually found her because of Candace, who is like a dancer, but she also has PCOS, and she was struggling with the same thing as me. She had gained weight. She was working out crazy, couldn't lose the weight no matter what she did. And then she went to Dr. Aliabadi and she helped her. So I'm like, okay, I know she can help me too. And the clarity that I got from going to Dr. Aliabadi was crazy. First of all, she explained not only like why I couldn't lose weight, and the reason for that is insulin resistance. With PCOS, your body is becoming resistant to insulin, and insulin, when your blood sugar is up, insulin is what helps break down that blood sugar into energy. If your body can't use it, it's just going to get stored. She also broke down why women with PCOS tend to have anxiety or depression, and also tend to have eating disorders, because if you are seeing changes in your body and the normal like calories in, calories out, working out, being focused, whatever it is, doesn't work, you're going to just go to more and more and more extreme measures. And a lot of those extreme measures lead you into having an eating disorder. And a lot of those extreme measures can lead you into depression or anxiety. So the first thing that she prescribed me was birth control. And I was actually very willing to take birth control. I had read books like This Is Your Brain on Birth Control and the way that, hormones alter your body. And I hadn't been on birth control myself since I was maybe like 21 or 22. So it had been about 8, 9, 10 years, something like that, off of birth control. And while I definitely like acknowledge, I feel like right now there's kind of like a movement. A lot of people want to get off birth control or want to be more aware or in control of like their bodies or their hormones or their fertility or whatever it is, which I totally get. But me, as someone who was very sick, like genuinely sick, because another thing that comes with PCOS is awful mood swings. Awful mood swings. My mood was all over the place. And so were my cravings, which is another symptom of PCOS, because your blood sugar is so unstable that you're just rocking and rolling all day. It looks like a roller coaster. Sometimes you're up, then you crash. You're like, I need food, I need sugar, I need something. And then it just continues to happen, right? Constantly, all day, very moody, very irritable. And then, of course, having a period for 40 days, 35 days at a time will also make you very moody and very irritable, because you can't like go anywhere. You can't do anything. You can't trust that whatever menstrual product will hold you down, right? Like you're beholden to your home or your own personal space so you can like handle those things. And it was very stressful, very, very stressful for me. So I was more than willing to go on birth control to help with my PCOS. Knowing that, of course, it's, people like to say it's a Band-Aid and blah, 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 but I was sick. So I really had to like release the shame of feeling like medication was bad or medication was not the best or right way to help me. I needed a break. And being on birth control, controlling my hormones really helped me with that. What birth control did for me was just it helped my estrogen levels, because again, when it's a whole very confusing cycle, and I'm still kind of confused by it sometimes. But the stress of insulin resistance in your blood and in your body, also it puts stress on your ovaries. Your ovaries aren't producing enough estrogen, which is the reason you get things like hair loss or hair growth in other areas, because those are all controlled by testosterone. Weight gain, again, testosterone, androgens. So the birth control gave me more estrogen in my body and made me feel a lot better, made me less stressed out about my cycle bleeding for weeks on end, made my mood a lot more stable, made my hunger cues a lot more stable. I still have hair on my chin and I still have hair on my upper lip. Don't like that. And I still struggle to lose weight. But overall, I'm very proud of my choice to not shun birth control as an option. And I hope that for you listening, if you find that you are having issues with your hormones or your body or your weight or whatever it is, that you won't shun medication. I forgot. I actually forgot a part of this story. This PCOS thing has been quite trials and tribulations, because before I went to a gynecologist, actually, now I'm remembering, I went to a holistic doctor first. And that was very helpful. But it was too overwhelming for me at the time. My symptoms were so bad that I felt like I needed something to get me under control now versus later. But what I learned from the holistic doctor who ran my blood and we did all the tests and panels was that I needed to be eating more foods that were brassicas. So that's broccoli, cabbage, bok choy, cauliflower, and kale. Those are all the same plants. I was told that I need to eat more of those plants, which I still do, and that's always been extremely helpful. That the workouts that I was doing was just too much and too harsh and too stressful for my body. I, being a past athlete, love to do too much. Like I will work out until I can't walk because I just feel like it's not enough. Like if I do my workout and I can breathe fine and I can just walk out the door and it's whatever, I'm like, what was the point of that? Like I need to suffer a little bit. I need to be stressed out. I need to, like I don't know. I like a challenge. I want it to be hard and difficult. I like pushing myself. So that's what I was doing. But I realized that in doing that, you spike your cortisol. And with your blood sugar and your insulin already out of whack, spiking your cortisol is absolutely disastrous for PCOS. The more you know. So I was also doing that, which was completely stressing my body out. Workouts for PCOS are supposed to be slower, which is something that I'm still struggling with. Walking, swimming, yoga, Pilates, where I, again, want to do HIIT workouts, sweat, make it hard, feel sore for days after. That's not necessarily what is best for my body. So I'm still trying to learn and adapt in that way. But what is good for PCOS that I've learned that is naturally something that I'm more inclined to do is lifting really heavy weights, because building up your muscle mass helps your body's metabolism and helps your blood sugar, because muscles need more nutrients, or just muscles need sugar to function. So the more muscle you have, the more that the sugar in your blood after you eat actually has somewhere to go, instead of just going around and messing up your body. A supplement that is very helpful for PCOS. I'm not great at taking supplements, truthfully. I think supplements are fantastic because me being like growing up as like a health nut, I like supplements. I like that there are things from the earth that can help us and that can heal us. But I'm just not that good at it. So inositol was one of those supplements that I was recommended from my holistic naturopathic doctor, and that I have done a lot of research on. That was really, really, that would have been very helpful for me, I think, had I been more consistent with it. I've heard amazing things about taking it, and how helpful it is for blood sugar, insulin resistance, even cortisol, but I didn't do that well on it. See, that's the thing. I remember talking to my therapist at the time between I went to the naturopathic doctor before I met with Thai's Dr. LABeauty. And I just remember telling her, like, I'm tired. Like, I am trying so hard to, like, manage my symptoms and to feel healthier and to get my weight down and to, help with my mood swings and my cravings. And I just remember eating so much, and like I could never eat the right things. Like I was getting anxiety about what I was eating. And again, this is before I met Dr. LABeauty, and she literally explained away all of these things that I was feeling. But I remember my therapist telling me, like, you can rest. Like, you don't have to try so hard to fix yourself. And even now I think about it and I'm like, when I'm stressed out, when I'm trying to solve all of my problems all at once, I'm stressed for my problems, I remember that I can rest. I don't know why it sounds so like basic and elementary, but to me it was very like, oh, I don't have to actively be trying all of the time. It's not helpful and it's not helping me. And it probably was making me sicker because just the stress of it all, again, was messing with my blood sugar and messing with my insulin and yada, yada, yada. And I was just scared that if I wasn't actively trying to make it better, that it would get worse. And then I would be in like a deeper hole and make it even harder for me to eventually get better. But what I've since learned with PCOS, as it is a chronic illness, is that you have to just live your life at some point. And there's always going to be ebbs and flows and periods of time where your symptoms are better and periods of time where your symptoms are worse. And you really just have to go with the flow on, what's happening with your body. The idea of just being sick is like awful to me. Like, it's very terrifying. I don't ever want to be sick, feel sick. I don't think anyone does. But when you have a chronic illness, you don't have a choice. So, like, it's very much like, girl, get over yourself. Just be sick, okay? Rest if you need to. It's not that deep. Like, it's not a moral judgment on you that you are sick. Or it's not also, which was a very hard lesson for me to learn, it's not a moral judgment on you if you don't feel like doing every single thing to get better at this moment, because that's not healthy either. Another medication that Dr. LABeauty prescribed me was Ozempic. Obviously, you hearing that may be like, ooh, controversial, ooh, Hollywood girl, ooh. But the thing is, Ozempic is literally made for PCOS girlies. Like, yes, it's people know it as a diabetic drug, but I think the media did a lot of fear mongering into making it seem like people who needed Ozempic, people who are using Ozempic to lose weight, were taking it from those who needed it for diabetes. The interesting thing is, when you have PCOS, you're almost pre-diabetic, right? Like, you have insulin resistance. Therefore, taking a drug that helps with insulin resistance is quite literally, the drug is made for you. And with a lot of fear mongering that has been going on around Ozempic, I feel like it means that people who need it, PCOS girlies, people with diabetes, people with pre-diabetes, may feel dissuaded from using it because they feel like they're not sick enough for it, or they feel like it makes them like they're cheating, right? But like, you wouldn't tell someone who has like heart disease that they're cheating by taking a heart disease medication. So why would you tell someone who has insulin resistance and is struggling to lose? Like, the weight loss is a side effect of the drug. What is actually happening is that your body is relearning how to utilize your blood sugar better. I was talking with a friend who sister has diabetes, or type 1, and she was saying, like, no one cares. People don't care about those who have diabetes this much, you know? Like, they're using like their fake care, like they should. I'm not saying that like it's a appropriate thing that they don't care, but they're using that as a scapegoat to be angry with people who are overweight and want to lose weight, which I find really interesting and like super true, because what you're essentially saying is like, you're not sick enough for medication yet, or you're saying that you should, like, that it's a moral judgment, that your overweightness is your fault, and therefore you need to not go the easy way and do it the hard way by working out and eating to justify wanting to feel better in your body, which I find really, really interesting. I think I was like a post that I had seen about Oprah, for example, saying that Oprah using Ozempic was doing it the easy way or something like that, as if Oprah probably has done more diets, has worked out harder in her 70 years of life than most of us. Like, let's be for real. Oprah has struggled with her weight for a very long time. And it's not to say that like she needs to be thin to be happy, but for her, she felt like that was a struggle that she couldn't conquer and she needed help. It's interesting what things society or one another think is appropriate to get help with, and what we think is not appropriate to get help with. The other thing is like, drug companies spike the prices of these drugs not because of supply and demand. They just do it. Like, no, like, insulin is so expensive. It's not supply and demand. Same with Ozempic, same with Wegovy, same with Zepbound, all these other drugs, again, that are GL1P. And truthfully, I know that it's human to be hypocritical. I'm not actually necessarily angry at those who are being hypocritical, but I am acknowledging it and like trying to say it out loud so that people realize like what they're saying and what they're doing, you know? And I also want to note that like you don't necessarily know who is sick and who isn't sick in terms of whether they should or shouldn't be using medication to help with whatever they need to help with their body, right? Like you don't know people's health histories. You don't know what celebrities have what issues, you know? And it just doesn't seem fair as someone who does have a health issue to use other people with health issues as a scapegoat for the reason you don't want them to feel good about their body. You know? Like that's not right. Because I shouldn't have had to tell you that not you necessarily, but the generic you. I shouldn't have to tell anyone that I am sick and have PCOS and chronic illness and blah, 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 for me to justify my use of a medication to them. That's nobody's business. So I would like us to apply that minding our businessness to everyone and stop feeling like others' health history, like you're entitled to it in order to use this medication specifically, because again, I think the media has done a lot of fear mongering around it and about it. I did have some negative symptoms with using Ozempic. I was very nauseous. That was my biggest thing, was the nausea. Well, there were pros and cons. There are a lot of pros to using Ozempic outside of the weight loss. In listing the pros and cons, I'll just start with the cons first. Definitely, I experienced a lot of nausea. But I think that was also because I was on antidepressants at the time, and my antidepressants were contraindicated with my anti-nausea medication. So I couldn't take my anti-nausea medication. So I just had to thug it out, and I couldn't do much. I was very much on the couch, very much sick. You inject yourself once a week, and I would probably be sick maybe 4 or 5 days out of that week. Even though I was going up slightly in medication dosage, I was still really, really sick from it. Using the anti-nausea medication would have helped a lot. Another negative side effect was constipation, TMI. But I don't really... I don't know, it was a discomfort, you know, like in my like lower stomach and abdomen, but it wasn't really that big of a deal for me, honestly. A lot of people say that it causes stomach paralysis, but the truth of the matter is that diabetes also causes paralysis of the stomach, so it's like a toss-up. Of course, all medications are going to have risks, but one of the biggest pros for me with PCOS was what people call food noise. When you're blood sugar is just on a roller coaster 24/7, all day, every day, all you can think about is food. And not having to think about food in like, what am I going to eat? Oh, I have to eat this. Oh, I should eat this. Where should I? But I'm so hungry. I can't think. I feel like I'm going to pass out. I'm just going to eat bread. Oh, bread makes me sick. Oh, why did I eat bread? Now I had to eat something. Like the stress that food had given me, how stressful it had become just to eat, and eating is something you have to do every day, all day. I felt like a freedom when I wasn't constantly thinking about food. I appreciated not having much of an appetite so much because my hormones had gotten so out of whack that I was eating so much and I was just never full. I just wanted to eat all day, every day, and it was expensive and it was tiring, and I was just like, oh my God, I want to think about something else besides food. So that's something that I really appreciate Ozempic for, is quieting the food noise, as it's called. It made my cravings a lot more normal once I came off of it. I know a lot of people rebound hard sometimes after not taking the medication, but I didn't find that to be true. I gained like a little bit, like 10 pounds after I stopped using it. I used it, oh my gosh, why do you always do this? I used it for about 6 weeks, and then I got off of it. I gained about 10 pounds, and then My weight has honestly been pretty stable ever since. I've actually gone up slightly now, but that's nobody's business. But it took me like maybe a year to, after that 10-pound rebound bounce, to gain any weight back, that was significant. So you don't always have a hard rebound with PCOS. And again, the food noise and the cravings haven't been quieted. It really helped me make better food decisions in the long run. It really kind of helped restart my food desires, if that makes sense. So I was able to eat more whole, well-rounded foods. I was able to eat a normal amount of calories without feeling like hungry or ravenous. I was able to do that without constantly craving sugar. And it kind of really felt like a restart button and like a fresh start with food, which I deeply appreciated. Ozempic also helped me have a better relationship with exercise in the gym. While I was in my crazy workout, super hard every single day, I actually had a knee injury. I got a knee injury, which is the reason I had to stop working out. And once I stopped working out, my weight even blew up even more. Because my knee injury, I couldn't do anything. But I got injured because I was working out so hard and without seeing any results, and it was super frustrating. So again, I thought I just had to do more and more and more and more. And then when the knee injury came, which I learned came because even though I was working out, my body wasn't my knee, the joints, the muscles, ligaments around my knee weren't strong enough to compensate for the extra weight and the extra like jumping and impact that I was putting on my joints. So then I couldn't work out at all. And being on Ozempic allowed me to work out without thinking about wanting said workout to change my body. I was able to do workouts that just felt better to my injured self without feeling like it was a waste because it's not going to be enough to burn the calories to yada, 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 yada. It freed me from that, which gave me a new appreciation for working out. And I know I was an athlete, right? So like I know the other benefits of working out that are not weight related. I was thin for 28 years of my life, 29 years of my life. So like I am very aware that like working out doesn't necessarily mean being thinner. It may mean getting stronger. It may mean having better cardiovascular, whatever, like super, very aware, very familiar. But that never changed that I wanted to look like I was working out. And I do feel some shame saying that. And I do realize that that is probably a little bit problematic, but it's just the truth. And I know that other people feel that way as well. I like looking like I worked out all the time. I like looking like I'm strong. I know strong doesn't have a look, but when I look in the mirror, I want to see someone, if I was a stranger, I would acknowledge as strong, or someone who works out, or someone who puts effort into the way that they look. There's a lot of ways that you can put effort into the way that you look. This is just one of them, and this is one of them that I happen to value, coming from a family of athletes, being Jamaican, being an athlete myself. Like, it's what I care about. And it was very hard for me to not look like a person who worked out, even though I was busting my ass every single day for over a year. The irony of it all is that I was paying this trainer $100 a session. We worked out for almost a year. So over the course of a year, I paid this man like $12,000. And when people get weight loss surgery, BBLs, lipo, whatever it is, people are always like, oh, you could have just worked out. You could have just worked out. And in my head, I'm like, damn, I should have just got lipo. It would have been the same amount of money. The recovery would have been shorter. I wouldn't have hurt my knee. Like, that's crazy. That's crazy to even think about it in hindsight. And it's something that I joke about to myself a lot. So I should have just got the lipo. Fuck the trainer. But again, it really goes to show that like you don't know like behind the scenes what someone is going through, what they're struggling with, and or why their body looks the way that it does. And you don't need to know any of that for them to make decisions that you may not like, whether it be surgery or medication or none of the above, all of the above. It's nobody's business, babes. And as I've gotten older, I've really realized that, like, again, people be going through shit. Like, you can't and should not police the way anybody wants to show up comfortably in the world. So yeah, that's my little high horse. I have collected a lot of resources over the years since my PCOS journey and diagnosis 3 years ago. And I will have all of those resources linked out for you so you can learn more. Links to my doctor, links to more information on the supplements I mentioned, medication, why certain things work, general resources you can use and find on Instagram and on the internet at large about PCOS, Kind Body, how to get diagnosed, all of that super fun stuff. So yeah, I hope this episode was helpful for you and enlightening for you. Thank you for listening. Reminder to share and like and subscribe and review and rate on everywhere, because these conversations are very important and I want them to reach as many people as possible. Again, my name is Nyamka Robert Smith. This is If It Doesn't Feed You, Don't Water It, a wellness podcast for women of color.